In the late 1970s, something strange began happening across the vast, isolated landscapes of South America. Farmers in rural areas were making terrifying discoveries: animals mutilated with surgical precision. The cuts were too clean, the wounds too deliberate, and the animals had been drained of blood. It wasn't just the animals that were being targeted, though. People, too, were feeling the terrifying effects of this mysterious force that seemed to be haunting the continent. In one particular place, a remote Brazilian island called Kades, the situation escalated, and what was once a series of strange events turned into something far more sinister. At first, the animal mutilations were dismissed as freak accidents, perhaps the result of wild predators or even humans with ill intentions. But as the mutilations increased, the pattern became undeniable. The wounds were far too precise, and there was something chilling about the way the animals were being left behind, empty, lifeless, with no trace of what could be behind such horrors. The local community was in a state of confusion and fear. People locked themselves indoors after nightfall, unable to explain what was happening, but instinctively sensing that something far more dangerous was at play. Then, it wasn't just the animals. One by one, residents began reporting terrifying experiences of their own. They spoke of strange lights in the sky, bright, flickering orbs that hovered eerily above their homes and farms. It was as if these lights were watching them, following them. But the true horror began when those lights came closer. People described feeling paralyzed as the lights beamed down on them. They spoke of feeling blood being drained from their bodies, as if some invisible force was sucking the very life out of them. Imagine for a moment being one of those residents on Kades. It's the middle of the night, and the ceiling above your bed begins to glow an eerie orange. You can't move, can't cry out for help. The light intensifies, and before you know it, a hole opens in the ceiling above you, revealing nothing but the stars. Panic sets in as you feel something pull at your body, draining you of all your strength. What could this be? What could be behind this? The fear that must have gripped the hearts of those who lived on the island is unimaginable. For the people of Kades, this wasn't just a series of unsettling events, it was a crisis that struck at the very core of their community. The bond between neighbors grew stronger as they struggled to make sense of the chaos. Farmers abandoned their fields, fishermen refused to go out on the water, and the entire economy came to a standstill. Life on Kades, once peaceful and calm, became a living nightmare. What could cause such terror in a place so remote, so far from the chaos of the world's bigger cities? This wasn't just a local mystery anymore. It was a problem that demanded answers. As the residents of Kades began to unravel the strange happenings, one thing became clear. The force behind these events was something beyond human understanding, something far greater than they could have ever imagined. In a small desert town, Walter's world was turned upside down, not by a grand event or an earth-shattering discovery, but by the disappearance of his beloved camel, Humani. She wasn't just any camel. She was his companion, his friend, and in a way, the heartbeat of his quiet life. Walter and Humani had been inseparable for years, and now, without her, the silence in the desert felt louder, almost unbearable. He had watched day after day as the vibrant sunsets painted the sky in rich oranges and purples, with Humani always by his side. But now, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Walter's heart felt empty. What if she forgets me? He wondered, pacing by the edge of the town. What if she meets another camel, one with two humps, better than me? The loneliness crept in, like the chill of the desert night. His thoughts spiraled, and in his frustration, he turned to his friends, desperate for something, anything, to fill the void. Why don't you have Doris and the girls over for a game of Pinnacle? That always cheers you up, his neighbor suggested, trying to lighten the mood. But Walter wasn't interested in card games. He couldn't focus on anything except the fear that humanity might never come back. As days turned into weeks, Walter's anxiety grew, and his emotional state took a toll on the small community. People started noticing the changes in him, the sadness in his eyes, the way he no longer smiled when the kids came to pet humanity, or the way he lingered by the fence, staring at the horizon, waiting for something that never seemed to come. The tension in the air was palpable, as if everyone in town felt Walter's pain, his helplessness. But Walter's story wasn't just his alone. His community, which had long been built on the support of one another, felt the weight of his worry. They rallied around him, offering comforting words, but nothing seemed to ease the ache. The sense of urgency to find humanity became contagious. It wasn't just about a man and his camel anymore. It was about the bond that tied them all together, a reminder of the importance of community in times of uncertainty. Then, just when Walter thought all hope was lost, there came a twist. A neighbor passing through the town brought news that humanity was safe, back with her family, and would return soon. The relief that washed over Walter was overwhelming. It was as if the storm inside him had finally passed, leaving behind nothing but peace. In that moment, he realized that sometimes, even in the darkest moments, the connections we share with others and the support we give and receive are what truly keep us going. In the end, it wasn't just about a camel coming home. It was about the people who stepped up, the town that held Walter up when he couldn't stand on his own. And as the sun set that evening, Walter found his heart a little fuller, knowing that no matter the distance, the bonds of friendship and community were always within reach. In today's fast-paced world, technology is advancing at an unprecedented rate, and many of us feel like we're struggling to keep up. But what if I told you that a tool exists that can take your creative ideas and turn them into fully realized videos without the need for any complicated software or advanced technical skills? Imagine being able to create a video just by typing a few words. Sounds impossible, right? Well, thanks to Nido AI, this dream has become a reality. Nido AI takes care of the technical stuff, making it easy for anyone, no matter their skill level, to create stunning videos in minutes. Let me paint a picture for you. You've probably spent years gathering stories from your family, or perhaps you've got a collection of memories, images, or hobbies you've always wanted to share with the world. But the thought of making a video editing, adding transitions, and getting everything just right feels overwhelming. You might even have been deterred from pursuing your passions because you thought you just weren't tech-savvy enough. But with Nido AI, all of that changes. This tool gives you the power to create a professional-looking video from the comfort of your own home, with no technical jargon or complex steps involved. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. How does it work? It's simple, really. All you need to do is type a prompt. That's it. Nido AI takes care of the rest. Whether you're making a family video, a tribute to a loved one, or sharing a hobby that brings you joy, Nido AI transforms your words into a video that reflects your vision. You don't have to worry about expensive equipment or long hours spent learning complicated software. Nido AI makes it as easy as clicking a few buttons. For many of us, the idea of using AI might seem daunting, but this tool is different. It's designed to be user-friendly and intuitive. It doesn't matter if you've never touched editing software before. Nido AI is here to guide you through the process. You simply enter your ideas, and within minutes, you'll have a video that's ready to share. It's like having your own personal video editor, except it's smarter and faster, but there's more. Not only does Nido AI handle all the technical stuff, but it also lets you personalize your video even further. Want to adjust the pacing or add your own voice? No problem. Nido AI allows you to tweak every detail, ensuring that your video is a true reflection of your thoughts and emotions For someone like you, someone with decades of life experience, this could be an incredible way to preserve your memories or share your wisdom with the younger generations. Now, let's talk about what makes this tool truly exciting: the sense of urgency and anticipation it creates. Imagine being able to create a video on the fly whenever inspiration strikes. You won't have to wait for days or weeks for a professional editor to do the work. With Nido AI, the power to create is in your hands right now, and that's a feeling you can't ignore. Whether it's sharing family stories or showcasing your hobbies, you can dive into the creative process without hesitation. For all of us who have spent a lifetime collecting memories, there's something incredibly satisfying about having the ability to preserve those moments in a way that feels meaningful and personal. With Nido AI, you can do just that easily and effortlessly. So why wait? The future of video creation is here, and it's more accessible than ever before. Take the leap and see how Nido AI can bring your ideas to life. On the small island of Kades, Brazil, something strange and terrifying was unfolding that would forever change the lives of its residents. It wasn't just another isolated incident. It was the start of a series of bizarre events that no one could explain. The people of Kades had lived peacefully, tending to their farms, fishing the waters, and raising their families, just like so many of us here in America. But one night, everything changed. It began with a soft glow in the sky, followed by a flash of intense light that lit up the entire village. People rushed to their windows, confused and scared, watching as the lights seemed to hover over their homes. The next day, the first of many horrifying injuries were reported. Victims, mostly women, began to show up at the local clinic, covered in burns and strange puncture wounds. These weren't ordinary injuries from accidents or fights. The marks were too precise, almost surgical, as if someone or something was deliberately causing them. Dr. Carvalho, the island's only physician, was baffled. She had seen everything from fishing accidents to common cold cases, but nothing could explain what was happening now. And the worst part, the victims weren't just physically harmed. They were reporting a chilling experience. Many said they felt their blood being drained from their bodies, as if invisible hands were siphoning their life force. The local people had no explanation, but soon they gave these beings a name: Chupa Chupa, or bloodsuckers. To them, it seemed as if something sinister was at work, but they had no idea what. As these attacks continued night after night, the community began to feel a growing sense of panic. People barricaded themselves inside their homes, afraid to step outside after dark. The island, once vibrant with daily life, now felt like a prison. The economy collapsed as fishermen refused to go out and farmers abandoned their fields. The very air felt heavy with fear. It wasn't long before the local authorities contacted the Brazilian Air Force, desperate for answers. But instead of the help they so urgently needed, they were met with indifference. The military insisted it was all just rumors and that there was nothing to worry about. However, as they set up their operations and began to monitor the situation, the lights became more aggressive. It became clear that something truly extraordinary was happening on Kades, and the authorities could no longer ignore it. The people of Kades weren't just facing a strange phenomenon. They were dealing with a mystery that tested their resolve, their unity, and their survival. As weeks went by, the attacks didn't stop. Instead, they escalated. More lives were disrupted, and the island's residents found themselves fighting not just for survival, but for the truth. What were these lights? What were these creatures? And more importantly, were they a threat to everyone? This was a community bound together by fear, but also by hope. The desperation in their eyes, the overwhelming need for answers, it was something we all can relate to when faced with the unknown. Kades wasn't just a small island in Brazil. It was a symbol of how easily fear can tear apart a peaceful community, and how sometimes it takes more than just bravery to face what's out there. It takes unity, it takes hope, and above all, it takes a willingness to confront the unknown, no matter how terrifying it might be. In the remote island of Kades, Brazil, a small community of 2,000 people faced a terrifying and inexplicable phenomenon that would leave even the bravest hearts filled with dread. The island's residents had begun to suffer strange, unexplained injuries, and the one person they turned to for help was Dr. Carvalho, the island's only physician. For 6 months, Dr. Carvalho treated the injured, but she quickly realized that something was horribly wrong. The wounds were like nothing she had ever seen before: precise, surgical burns, puncture marks, and tissue damage so unusual that it defied any explanation. As a seasoned doctor, Dr. Carvalho had dealt with the typical island maladies: fishing injuries, farming accidents, and the occasional flu. However, what she encountered here was far beyond what she could treat. The injuries didn't make sense. Victims, mostly women, described strange beams of light and glowing ceilings before they were struck by a force that left them paralyzed. These mysterious injuries drained their bodies of blood without leaving a single drop on the floor. It was as if some force was draining the life out of them. Dr. Carvalho took blood samples, but the results were even more perplexing. The patient's blood counts were alarmingly low, yet there was no visible sign of external bleeding. In some cases, the burns appeared almost instantaneously and would take weeks to heal, leaving scars that no one could explain. The trauma was not just physical. The emotional toll on the people of Kades was devastating. Mothers, fathers, and children alike were terrified. The community began to fracture, with people staying inside. Too frightened to go out at night, the stakes were high, and Dr. Carvalho knew she had to find answers. She sent her most critical patients to a larger city, hoping the doctors there might provide insight. But even the specialists there were baffled. Despite every test they conducted, no one could pinpoint the cause of the injuries. In desperation, Dr. Carvalho turned to the local authorities, but they were overwhelmed by the strange nature of the attacks. After weeks of dead ends and no answers, the local police were unable to protect the people, and the island was soon plunged into a state of chaos. The situation grew increasingly dire. People began abandoning their homes, fleeing the island in fear. Businesses were shut down, and the island's economy collapsed. Those who remained were left in a constant state of dread, lighting bonfires and setting off fireworks, desperately trying to ward off the unknown force. But nothing seemed to work. The mysterious lights continued to hover over the island, taunting them with their impossible movements. Amid the growing panic, Dr. Carvalho remained determined to find an explanation. The community was in turmoil, and she knew that without answers, things would only get worse. But she couldn't do it alone. The island's survival now depended on unity, and as the tension mounted, the people of Kades had to come together to fight the unseen terror that was threatening their very existence. The chaos was palpable, and the urgency to solve the mystery had never been more pressing. The unknown was closing in, and the island was teetering on the edge of losing everything. In the late 1970s, the residents of Kades, a small island off the coast of Brazil, were living in a constant state of fear. The strange lights in the sky and the terrifying attacks on both animals and people were beyond their understanding. But when the local authorities were unable to provide answers, the Brazilian military stepped in. This is where Operation Saucer, or Opera Prato, began, and it marked the beginning of one of the most mysterious UFO investigations in modern history. As the situation worsened, the island's mayor, desperate and overwhelmed, turned to the Brazilian Air Force for help. His island was under attack, people were being injured, and 2 had already died. But the Air Force didn't respond the way he expected. Instead of sending fighter jets to destroy the unknown threat, they sent a team of investigators equipped with sophisticated cameras and tracking devices, led by Captain Alanda. They arrived with the intention to debunk the phenomenon, dismissing the UFO sightings as rumors or misunderstandings. As Captain Alanda and his team set up their observation posts along the beach, night after night, they witnessed firsthand the impossible maneuvers of these mysterious lights. They hovered silently in the sky, accelerating at speeds faster than any aircraft could manage, and tracking patterns that appeared calculated and deliberate. The lights weren't random, they seemed to be targeting certain areas, following a specific route over the water, the jungle, and even the village. The team began to realize that these weren't just lights. They were something far more intelligent, something that understood the behavior of the humans below. What happened next pushed the limits of human understanding. The military team documented electromagnetic interference, where compasses spun wildly, radios went silent, and even their most advanced tracking devices malfunctioned when the lights appeared. This was not just a technological anomaly, it was real. Yet, despite all the evidence they gathered, they could not capture a solid image of the craft. The lights remained elusive, a blurry, ethereal presence that continued to haunt the skies. The team's findings grew more compelling as the weeks passed. They had gathered over 2,000 pages of documents and hours of film, but still, the Brazilian Air Force didn't believe them. They were ordered to shut down the investigation, and all the evidence was classified. The authorities didn't want the world to know what was happening on Kades. For the people of the island, life slowly returned to a new normal, but the fear remained. They had seen something that couldn't be explained, and the military had closed the door on the truth. But the story didn't end there. Captain Alanda, who had spent months in Kades documenting the phenomena, would later speak out after retiring in the 1990s. The truth, however, came with a heavy price. Alanda, once a confident military leader, became haunted by what he had witnessed. His eventual death under mysterious circumstances added to the mystery that still lingers today. Did the Brazilian government know more than they were willing to admit? What was the military hiding? And most importantly, what was in those lights? For many, the question still remains, are we truly alone in the universe? The events on Kades may have been hidden away, but the stories of Operation Saucer still live on, reminding us all of the unknown forces that could be watching us from the skies. In the late 1970s, a peculiar and terrifying phenomenon swept across Brazil, particularly on the remote island of Kades. While the world was distracted by the cultural upheavals of the time, something far more mysterious was unfolding on this small patch of land. The events weren't just confined to strange lights in the sky or unexplained burns on the bodies of the island's residents. No, what really sent shockwaves through the community was the possibility that these UFOs weren't just visitors from space. They might have been part of something far darker and more secretive than anyone could have imagined. As the Brazilian government tried to manage the escalating chaos on the island, an unexpected connection began to emerge. Some began to wonder if the lights in the sky, the strange injuries, and the growing fear were tied to a much bigger web of secrecy, one that spanned not just Brazil, but several countries in South America. This was the height of Operation Condor, a covert operation involving military dictatorships from countries like Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Paraguay, all working together to eliminate political opposition, with the help of intelligence agencies like the CIA. Could these strange UFO sightings have been part of a larger, more sinister plan involving the military, government cover-ups, and perhaps even extraterrestrial technology? This theory started to take root as the lights continued to appear, and the island's residents found themselves caught in the middle of a mystery that felt too big for them to unravel. For those living on Kades, the tension was unbearable. Every night, the residents lay awake in fear, knowing that the strange lights could descend upon them at any moment. They weren't just afraid of the unknown. They feared that the very government meant to protect them was either powerless or unwilling to help. The Brazilian Air Force's response only added fuel to the fire. Instead of bringing in fighter jets to combat the UFOs, they sent a team of investigators with cameras and high-tech equipment, attempting to dismiss the phenomenon as nothing more than local rumors. It felt as though the people were being ignored, left to fend for themselves while the military carried on with its own agenda. As the situation grew more dire, it became clear that the people of Kades weren't simply victims of strange lights and unexplained injuries. They were caught in the middle of a high-stakes game of politics, secrecy, and fear. The military's refusal to confront the truth, the growing frustration of the residents, and the chilling possibility that these UFOs were part of a covert operation led by international powers created a sense of unease that was palpable. It wasn't just a mystery, it was a battle for truth and survival for older generations, especially those who had lived through their own turbulent times. This story resonated deeply. Many could relate to the feeling of being caught in a struggle much larger than themselves, of being left to navigate an increasingly complex world with very few answers. They knew what it was like to feel powerless in the face of forces beyond their control, whether it was the fear of war, the uncertainty of political unrest, or the shadow of government secrecy. These experiences gave them a unique perspective on the events unfolding on Kades. It wasn't just a strange story, it was a reminder of how easily fear and confusion could take hold when the truth is hidden from those who need it most. And as the mystery of the UFOs lingered, it became clear that the residents of Kades weren't just fighting for their lives, they were fighting for their right to know the truth. In the late 1970s, a team of investigators led by Captain Holanda was stationed on a remote island in Brazil to uncover the truth behind mysterious UFO sightings and unusual attacks. However, it wasn't until they started documenting these incidents that they discovered something truly mind-boggling. Their cameras, equipped with state-of-the-art infrared technology and night vision, began capturing images of not just lights in the sky, but distinct, solid objects, something no one expected. These weren't just streaks of light or vague shapes, but clearly defined, cylindrical objects, some stretching over 300 feet long, much larger than a commercial airliner. The team, which had initially been skeptical, began to see a clear pattern. These objects weren't simply hovering aimlessly. They followed a precise sequence of actions, traveling from the water to the jungle and eventually to the villages. There was a method to their movement, almost like they were tracking something, or worse, watching the people of the island. This was no ordinary natural phenomenon. It was something far more intelligent. With each passing night, the evidence grew stronger. They captured probes emerging from the larger crafts, disappearing into the jungle and returning, as if conducting surveillance. What made this discovery even more startling was the detail in the photographs. At first, it seemed as though the images were overexposed, showing nothing but bright white light. But as Captain Holanda scrutinized the negatives, something clicked. Holding them up to the light, faint outlines of objects began to appear, revealing the unmistakable shape of a cylindrical craft. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The team's skepticism was now replaced with the cold reality that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The objects seemed to operate with purpose and intelligence, and they moved in formations, suggesting that there was someone directly controlling them. For the first time, Captain Holanda and his team realized that the strange lights and shadows they had been chasing were more than just a curious oddity. They were a glimpse into something much bigger and far more unsettling. As the investigation continued, the urgency to get solid proof intensified. The stakes were higher than ever. The team knew they had captured something crucial, something that could change everything. But just when it seemed like they had the evidence to reveal the truth, the military stepped in and silence them. The photos, the footage, the data, it all disappeared. The operation was shut down. Captain Alanda and his team were left with nothing but their memories and the haunting realization that what they had uncovered might never be understood by the public. This story isn't just about UFOs or strange lights in the sky. It's about uncovering truths that many would rather keep hidden. The urgency and tension that gripped Alanda and his team during those months on the island was a direct reflection of the fear and uncertainty many of us feel when we face the unknown. What if what they discovered is something we, as a society, aren't ready for? The photographs may have been erased, but the questions they raised remain. Could there be more out there, silently observing us? And what would happen if they decided to make their presence known? These are questions that all of us, regardless of age, must continue to ask. The island of Kades was forever changed when Operation Saucer came to a sudden, abrupt end. For months, the military had been closely monitoring the mysterious UFO activity, capturing photos, videos, and collecting data on the strange lights that terrorized the locals. The quiet village, which once relied on farming and fishing for survival, had turned into a prison of fear, where people could no longer go about their daily routines without the looming threat of unknown forces watching over them. Captain Alanda, leading the military investigation, believed he was on the verge of uncovering something extraordinary. The team had gathered hundreds of hours of footage and thousands of pages of evidence, solid proof that the lights were not just random phenomena, but an intelligent force at work. For a while, it seemed like the truth was finally within reach. Alanda had become a man on a mission, fueled by the desire to expose the truth and protect the people of Kades. The locals, once skeptical, had come to trust him, believing that the military's presence could offer them some sense of safety. The Air Force team had become their last hope. However, just as things seemed to be moving toward a revelation, the higher-ups in the military ordered them to shut down the investigation. The team was told to surrender all documents, footage, and evidence. The truth about what had been happening on Kades was to be buried. No more questions, no more investigation, just silence. Alanda's heart sank as he received the order. After months of dangerous observation, just when they were on the cusp of proving the existence of UFOs, everything stopped. The shutdown was abrupt, leaving the team stunned and confused. Alanda could only follow orders, even though he knew that they were likely covering something up. The truth was out there, but it would never be seen. As the team packed up their gear and left Kades, the UFOs seemed to vanish as mysteriously as they had arrived. The people of Kades were left in limbo, their fears and suspicions lingering, but their hopes crushed. It was a difficult pill to swallow. The community, already shaken by the strange occurrences, now had to come to terms with the fact that the government had decided they were not entitled to the truth. The island's residents had been abandoned. Their ordeal, their suffering, had been ignored, buried under layers of government secrecy. But the story didn't end there. Years later, when Captain Alanda was retired, he felt the weight of what had happened too much to bear in silence any longer. He decided to speak out. The world needed to know what had happened on Kades, and Alanda, now a man haunted by his knowledge, could no longer keep quiet. His decision to share the truth would come at a heavy price, one that would leave a lasting impact on his life and those around him. In this story of secrecy, betrayal, and hidden truths, we see a community's struggle to survive in the face of an unknown threat. The people of Kades had been caught in a web of uncertainty, a web that was spun tighter with every passing day. They were left to wonder if the silence from the government was a sign of fear or something more sinister. And in the end, the question remains, how much of the truth are we willing to accept? What will we do when it's finally revealed? In 1997, years after the mysterious events on Kades Island had passed, Captain Alanda, now a retired lieutenant colonel, made a decision that would change everything. For 2 days, he spoke openly about the terrifying experiences he had witnessed on the island in the late 1970s during Operation Saucer. As he relived those days, the confident military man that once led the investigation was gone. In his place was a man deeply haunted by the memories of what he had seen. Alanda's voice trembled as he described the terrifying encounters with UFOs, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something far more dangerous had been at play. It was a quiet evening, one of those nights when Alanda was supposed to be resting at home, but instead, his thoughts were still tangled in the events of Kades. One night, while lying in bed, a sudden flash of light filled the room, followed by a crackling sound like an electrical surge. He was paralyzed, unable to move as he saw a figure at the foot of his bed. Just under 5 feet tall, wearing a suit resembling that of an astronaut or a diver, the being didn't speak, but its presence was chilling. Alanda was held in place, unable to react. He thought it might be a dream, but the next morning, something felt off. He noticed an itchy spot on his forearm, which was inexplicably red. Upon closer inspection, it was clear something had been implanted under his skin. The realization hit him hard. His body bore the mark of something beyond human understanding. A small, flexible object lay beneath his skin, something that neither X-rays nor normal medical tests could detect. Only a compass, placed near the spot, reacted to it. Could this be another form of contact? Was he marked by the very beings he had been investigating? These questions, unanswered for decades, began to haunt him even more. Alanda, once confident in his ability to understand the unknown, now found himself questioning everything. The story he shared in 1997 wasn't just about UFOs or strange lights in the sky. It was about a personal journey through fear, disbelief, and realization. Alanda had no answers, only pieces of a larger puzzle that seemed to grow more complex the longer he stared at it. He felt a deep responsibility to tell the world what he knew, not just for his own peace of mind, but for the safety of others. His duty was clear to share the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. Unfortunately, Alanda's decision to speak came with its own price. Just weeks after his public interview, as his story began to gain attention, he was found dead in his apartment. Authorities claimed it was a suicide, but many of those who knew him couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was at play. The mysteries of Kades had cost Alanda far more than he ever anticipated. But his death left more questions than answers. Who or what had he truly encountered on that island? And what did it mean for the future of humanity? These questions linger, urging us to ask, what if the truth is still out there, waiting to be discovered? As we look up at the stars, it's easy to feel small, insignificant even, in the vastness of the universe. But what if we are not alone? What if out there among the stars, there are civilizations far more advanced than ours, watching and waiting for the right moment to make contact? This thought has lingered in the minds of many, especially as we hear of bizarre occurrences like the UFO sightings in Kades, Brazil, where strange lights terrorized a small island, leaving behind mysterious injuries and unanswered questions. But what if this is just the beginning? What if these strange visitors have been watching us for far longer than we realize? Could they be testing us? Testing our defenses? In the dark depths of space, an ancient theory called the dark forest hypothesis suggests that any civilization capable of interstellar travel would view emerging civilizations like ours as potential threats. Imagine this: a vast, eerie forest where every civilization hides in the shadows, carefully treading, watching for any sign of another life form. Resources are limited. Technology grows exponentially. And any civilization that reveals itself risks being destroyed by another just to ensure its own survival. This theory paints a chilling picture of how extraterrestrial life might view us as a potential rival, a danger that could emerge at any moment. And perhaps, in their eyes, we are not the intelligent beings we imagine ourselves to be. We could be like ants, a nuisance to be squashed if we become too loud, too bold, too visible. This isn't science fiction. The possibilities are real, and they are terrifying. Could it be that these UFOs we see, these mysterious lights in the sky, are not just visitors, but harbingers of something darker, a reminder that we are not the only ones out there? For those of us who have seen the world change over the decades, this question becomes all the more pressing. We've lived through the space race, the fear of nuclear war, and now the constant presence of technology in our lives. We've watched the world shrink as advances in communication and travel bring us closer to distant lands and cultures. But could the next step in our evolution involve a contact far beyond anything we've ever imagined? As we stand on the brink of a new era, the question looms larger than ever. What happens when we finally make contact? Will it be the greatest achievement in human history, or the beginning of the end? This is a question that we must answer together. The stakes are high. The future of our species could depend on how we respond to the possibility that we are not alone in the universe. For those of us who have lived through so much, it's hard not to feel a sense of urgency, to wonder if our time has come. As the world becomes more uncertain, it's not just the young who feel the need for answers, it's everyone, especially those of us who remember a simpler time. The truth is out there, and it's time we as a society begin to ask the right questions before it's too late. In a world where the unknown looms just beyond our understanding, the idea of contact with extraterrestrial civilizations brings both excitement and fear. The implications of such an event are profound, touching not only our sense of safety, but also our very place in the universe. What if the beings we have feared or fantasized about aren't just stories or the subject of late-night shows? What if, in the not-so-distant future, humanity faces the truth about life beyond Earth? For many of us, especially those who've lived through times of rapid change, this idea feels both impossible and inevitable. Think back to the space race of the 1960s. We watched in awe as the first men set foot on the moon, a symbol of our ambition and curiosity. Yet, as thrilling as that moment was, it also left us asking, what's next? What lies beyond the moon? What's out there in the vast expanse of space, where the stars are countless and the possibilities seem endless? As the years passed, our technological advancements have only deepened our curiosity about the cosmos. But now, with reports of UFO sightings, encounters, and strange phenomena growing more frequent, we must ask ourselves, are we truly ready for what may be waiting for us? Some experts suggest that we may be on the brink of making first contact with an advanced extraterrestrial race. And if that happens, what are we going to do? It's a question that becomes even more urgent when we consider the possibility that extraterrestrials may see us not as equals, but as a threat. Stephen Hawking once warned that an advanced civilization might view us like the European explorers once saw the indigenous peoples of the Americas primitives to be conquered or eliminated. The idea of being wiped out simply because we dared to make contact is terrifying, but it's not one we can afford to ignore. The need for careful preparation becomes crystal clear. Imagine for a moment the chaos that would erupt if extraterrestrials landed on Earth tomorrow. How would we as individuals react? How would communities respond? In an instant, everything we've ever known could change. But even more frightening than the unknown is the idea that we may not be ready. That's where the importance of human connection comes in. As we face the potential for first contact, we must lean on each other. The community, your neighbors, your family, and your friends will play a crucial role in helping us navigate this extraordinary challenge. It will be up to all of us, united in our shared humanity, to ensure that we don't let fear or chaos divide us. Instead, we must prepare together. Scientists, philosophers, theologians, and everyday people must work side by side to face this new reality. If first contact does come, we need to ensure that we're not merely a threat to be eliminated, but a civilization worthy of making peace. The question remains, are we ready? Or will we let fear and uncertainty rule our response? The clock is ticking, and the time to prepare is now. The decisions we make in these crucial moments will shape the future of humanity for generations to come. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you found it helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos. I truly appreciate your support and hope to see you again in the next videos.